Picture this, the rolling hills of Devonshire, England, 1823. The morning mist clings to ancient oak trees as carriages wind their way toward Ravenshollow Estate, one of the most magnificent manor houses in all of England. Today is no ordinary day. Today, Duke Alexander Blackwood, the most eligible bachelor in the county, has made an announcement that has set the entire region ablaze with excitement and ambition. Duke Blackwood, with his striking black hair and piercing grey eyes, commands respect wherever he goes. At 28, he has managed his vast estates with wisdom beyond his years, earning a reputation as both a shrewd businessman and a compassionate landlord. But there's something mysterious about him, something that makes people whisper. Perhaps it's the way he seems to see straight through to a person's soul, or maybe it's the tragic loss of his parents 5 years prior that left him somewhat withdrawn from society. Now, under pressure from his council and the weight of his title, he has finally agreed to marry. The Pemberton family received their invitation 3 days ago. Lord Pemberton nearly fainted when he read it. His 3 daughters, each beautiful and accomplished in their own right, had been personally invited to spend a fortnight at Ravenshollow Estate, where the Duke would choose his bride. Lady Victoria Pemberton, the eldest at 24, is everything society expects of a future duchess. Golden-haired and sharp-witted, she speaks 4 languages fluently and can discuss politics with the intensity of a seasoned diplomat. She's already planning how she'll redecorate Ravenshallow's drawing rooms. Lady Isabel, 22, possesses the kind of beauty that stops conversations mid-sentence. Her auburn curls frame a face so perfectly sculpted that portrait artists beg to paint her. She moves with the grace of a professional dancer and has turned down 7 marriage proposals, waiting for someone worthy of her exceptional looks. And then there's Lady Rosalind, Rose as her family calls her. At 19 she's the youngest, and in her sister's shadows she's learned to be invisible. While Victoria commands attention with her intellect and Isabel dazzles with her beauty, Rose has always been the one who notices things others miss. She remembers that the housekeeper prefers lavender tea for her arthritis, knows that the stable boy worries about his sick mother, and can sense when someone is hiding pain behind their smile. As their carriage approaches Ravenshollow Estate, Victoria adjusts her perfectly arranged hair one final time. "Remember, girls," she says with the authority of the eldest, "this is the opportunity of a lifetime. One of us will become a duchess." Isabel checks her reflection in her hand mirror. "Obviously it will be me. Have you seen the way men look at me?" Rose says nothing, clutching a small book of poetry in her lap. She's not even sure why she's here. Everyone knows the Duke will choose Victoria's intelligence or Isabel's beauty. What could he possibly see in quiet, unremarkable Rose? The estate takes their breath away. Ravenshollow rises from the landscape like something from a fairy tale, stone towers reaching toward the sky, ivy-covered walls and gardens that seem to stretch on forever. But it's not just beautiful, there's something almost melancholy about it, as if the very stones hold memories of love and loss. Duke Alexander Blackwood greets them personally at the entrance, and Rose feels her heart skip when she sees him. He's taller than she expected, with broad shoulders that fill his dark coat perfectly. His black hair catches the afternoon light, and when he smiles, which seems rare, his entire face transforms. But it's his eyes that captivate her. They're the color of storm clouds, and they seem to hold secrets she desperately wants to understand. "Lady Pemberton," he says to their mother with a respectful bow, "and the renowned Pemberton sisters, your reputation for grace and accomplishment precedes you." Victoria steps forward with a confident smile. "Your Grace, we are honored by your invitation. I've been looking forward to discussing your estate management strategies. I've read extensively about agricultural innovations." The Duke nods politely. "Impressive, I look forward to our conversations." Isabel curtsies with practiced perfection, her dress arranged to show her figure to its best advantage. "Your Grace, Ravenshollow is even more magnificent than the stories say. You must be very proud." "Thank you, Lady Isabel. Beauty recognizes beauty, I suppose." Then his gaze falls on Rose, who has been standing slightly behind her sisters, trying to disappear. For a moment that feels like eternity, their eyes meet, and Rose feels something electric pass between them. She curtsies awkwardly, nearly dropping her book. "And you must be Lady Rosalind," he says, his voice softer than it was with her sisters. "I hope you'll find Ravenshollow peaceful." Rose nods, unable to find her voice. How did he know she might need peace? That evening, the great dining hall buzzes with conversation as the Duke hosts dinner for several local families. Victoria dominates the discussion about trade routes and politics. Isabel has half the men at the table hanging on her every word as she recounts her season in London. Rose sits quietly, observing. She notices how the Duke's smile doesn't quite reach his eyes when he laughs at Lord Hamilton's jokes. She sees how he unconsciously touches a signet ring on his finger whenever someone mentions marriage. And she watches how he glances toward the portrait of a beautiful woman above the fireplace, a woman with kind eyes and the same stubborn curl in her dark hair that the Duke sometimes has to push from his forehead. After dinner, while Victoria debates economic theory with the Duke's advisor and Isabel entertains admirers with piano performances, Rose slips away to the library. She's always found comfort in books, and tonight she needs to escape the overwhelming pressure of being evaluated like a prize horse. The library at Ravenshollow is magnificent, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with leather-bound volumes, comfortable reading chairs arranged near a crackling fireplace, and tall windows that frame the moonlit gardens. Rose runs her fingers along the spines, reading titles in the dim candlelight. Finding anything interesting? She spins around to find Duke Alexander standing in the doorway, his formal dinner jacket replaced by a simple white shirt and dark vest. He looks younger, more approachable without all the ceremonial trappings. "I'm sorry, Your Grace, I didn't mean to intrude." "Please," he says, stepping into the room. "This library exists to be used, and call me Alexander when we're alone. All that formal address gets exhausting." Rose feels her cheeks warm. The conversation at dinner was rather intense. I needed some quiet." Alexander moves closer, and Rose catches the scent of sandalwood and something uniquely masculine. "I understand. Sometimes I think my guests forget I'm a person, not just a title to be won." There's something vulnerable in his voice that makes Rose's heart ache. "That must be very lonely." He looks at her with surprise, as if no one has ever considered his feelings before. "It can be. Tell me, what were you reading before I interrupted?" Rose holds up her small book. "Poetry, William Blake. My sisters think it's impractical, but I find his words honest." "To see a world in a grain of sand," Alexander quotes softly, "and heaven in a wild flower." Rose's eyes widen. "You know Blake." "Poetry has always been my secret weakness. There's something about the way poets capture truth that prose cannot." For the next hour, they talk about books, about the way certain passages can change your entire perspective, about the comfort of stories that understand your heart. Rose forgets that Alexander is a duke. She forgets about the competition with her sisters. For this precious time, he's just a man who loves literature as much as she does, who speaks with passion about ideas and beauty and the complexity of human nature. When the clock chimes 11, Alexander reluctantly stands. "I should let you rest. Tomorrow begins the formal courtship activities." As he reaches the door, he turns back. "Rose, Lady Rosalind, thank you. I haven't had a conversation like that in longer than I care to admit." Alone in the library, Rose presses the book to her chest and allows herself one moment to imagine what it might be like to have such conversations every evening, to be the person who brings that light to Alexander's eyes. But tomorrow, reality will return. Tomorrow, the competition begins in earnest, and quiet Rose will fade back into the shadows while her brilliant, beautiful sisters shine. What she doesn't know is that in his chambers, Alexander stares out at the moonlit gardens and thinks about storm-grey eyes that see too much, and wonders why the most interesting woman he's met in years is the one who seems to want to disappear. The morning sun streams through Ravenshallow's tall windows as the formal courtship begins. Lady Pemberton has dressed her daughters like they're going to war, which in a sense they are. Victoria wears a deep blue gown that emphasizes her intellectual seriousness, while Isabel has chosen cream silk that makes her look like a goddess descended from Olympus. Rose's dress is lovely but modest, pale green that brings out her eyes but doesn't command attention. Duke Alexander has planned various activities to better acquaint himself with each lady. The morning begins with a tour of his prized gardens, where he takes obvious pride in showing off the rare roses he's cultivated and the maize his grandfather planted 50 years ago. Victoria immediately begins asking detailed questions about soil composition and growing seasons. She's clearly done her research, and Alexander appears impressed by her knowledge. "You've given considerable thought to estate management," he observes. "A duchess must understand all aspects of her husband's holdings," Victoria replies confidently. "I've studied agriculture, household management, and social responsibilities extensively." Isabel, meanwhile, poses artfully among the roses, commenting on how the flowers complement her complexion. "Beauty should be surrounded by beauty," she says, arranging her shawl to catch the morning light. Several of the Duke's male guests who have joined the tour nod in obvious agreement. Rose walks quietly behind, but she's noticing things others miss. She sees how Alexander's jaw tightens when Victoria refers to her husband's holdings, as if she's already won. She observes how his eyes glaze slightly when Isabel poses for the third time in 5 minutes, and she notices something else, a small section of the garden that's clearly been recently planted, with flowers that don't quite match the rest of the carefully planned design. "These are forget-me-nots," she says softly, stopping beside the newer plantings. Alexander, who was politely listening to Victoria's discourse on crop rotation, immediately turns. "Yes, I planted them last spring." Rose kneels carefully, her dress pooling around her, and gently touches one of the tiny blue flowers. "They're not native to this soil type. They require more shade and moisture. It must have taken considerable effort to create the right conditions." For a moment, Alexander forgets about the other guests entirely. "How did you know that?" I help with our gardens at home. Not the formal ones, those are for show. But I have a small plot behind the kitchen where I grow herbs for the cook and flowers for the servants' quarters. Forget-me-nots are difficult but worth the effort." She looks up at him, shielding her eyes from the sun. "They mean true love and remembrance, don't they?" Alexander's expression grows soft and sad. "My mother's favorite flower. She used to say they bloom to remind us that love never truly dies." The moment stretches between them, charged with understanding. Then Victoria's voice cuts through. "Your Grace, shall we continue? I'm eager to see your greenhouse innovations." The spell breaks and Alexander straightens, the composed Duke once again. But as they walk away, Rose notices him glance back at the forget-me-nots, and she wonders what memories they hold. The afternoon brings tea on the terrace, where the 3 sisters can display their social graces. It's Isabel's time to shine. She holds court like a queen, entertaining the gathered guests with witty stories about London society, charming the men with her laughter, and impressing the ladies with her knowledge of fashion and social protocols. Victoria uses the opportunity to engage Alexander in serious conversation about his responsibilities as a peer of the realm, demonstrating her suitability as a political partner. "I believe a duchess should be her husband's greatest advisor," she states firmly. Rose, as usual, focuses on making sure everyone has what they need. She notices that elderly Lord Whitmore's tea has gone cold and quietly arranges for fresh service. She sees that Lady Hamilton's daughter looks overwhelmed by all the adult conversation and gently engages her in discussion about her doll. She observes that one of the young gentlemen seems anxious about a grass stain on his jacket and discreetly arranges for it to be cleaned. Alexander watches it all. Every small kindness, every moment of genuine care that Rose shows without seeking recognition or reward. When Mrs. Crawford, the estate's aging housekeeper, struggles with the heavy tea service, Rose immediately stands to help, despite her mother's sharp look of disapproval. "Thank you, my lady," Mrs. Crawford whispers gratefully. "These old hands aren't what they used to be." "Please just call me Rose," she replies with a warm smile. "And thank you for all you do. This house runs like clockwork because of your care." The housekeeper's eyes fill with tears. In 30 years of service, no lady has ever thanked her so genuinely. Alexander feels something shift in his chest as he watches this exchange. When did kindness become so rare among the nobility? That evening brings the formal dinner and dancing that society expects. The great hall has been transformed into a ballroom, with musicians playing from the gallery above and candles casting everything in golden light. It's a scene from a fairy tale, and all eyes are on the Duke and his potential brides. Victoria opens the dancing with Alexander, and they make a striking pair, both tall, both carrying themselves with authority. She follows his steps perfectly, having trained with the best masters in London, and their conversation never falters as they discuss various topics of importance. Isabel's turn comes next, and the room falls silent to watch them. She moves like silk in the wind, her every gesture graceful beyond measure. They look like a portrait come to life, the handsome Duke and the beautiful lady, everything society believes a perfect couple should be. When it's Rose's turn, she feels every eye in the room upon her. Her hands tremble slightly as Alexander leads her onto the floor, and she's certain she'll stumble and embarrass herself. But something magical happens when the music begins. Alexander's touch is gentle but confident, guiding her steps, and his eyes never leave her face. "Breathe," he whispers softly, "it's just us." And somehow it is. The room fades away until there's nothing but the music, the warmth of his hand in hers, and the way he looks at her as if she's the only woman in the world. Rose finds herself moving with natural grace, following his lead as if they've danced together 100 times before. "You're trembling," Alexander observes gently. "I don't dance often," Rose admits. "I'm usually the one ensuring the musicians have everything they need, or helping wallflowers find conversation partners." "Always taking care of others," he says, and there's something in his voice she can't identify. "Who takes care of you?" The question catches her off guard, and for a moment she can't breathe. No one has ever asked her that before. "That's not necessary, I'm quite capable." "That's not what I asked." Their eyes meet, and Rose sees something in his expression that makes her heart race. But before she can respond, the music ends and reality crashes back. The room erupts in polite applause, and Alexander steps away, the formal distance returning between them. Later that night, Rose can't sleep. She slips out to the gardens, needing air and solitude to process the overwhelming emotions of the day. The moon is full, casting silver light over everything, making the familiar seem magical and strange. She finds herself drawn to the forget-me-not patch, where she sits on a small stone bench nearby. The night air is cool and sweet, filled with the scent of jasmine and roses. "Couldn't sleep either." Rose's heart stops, then begins racing as Alexander emerges from the shadows. He's shed his formal evening wear for simple dark trousers and a white shirt, the sleeves rolled up and the collar open. His black hair is slightly tousled, as if he's been running his hands through it. "I didn't mean to intrude on your gardens, Your Grace." "Alexander," he corrects gently, "and you're not intruding, I come here when I need to think." He sits beside her on the bench, careful to maintain proper distance, but Rose is intensely aware of his presence. "What troubles your thoughts tonight?" she asks softly. Alexander is quiet for a long moment, staring at the forget-me-nots. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like everyone around you has decided who you are, what you want, what you need, and you've simply gone along with it?" Rose turns to study his profile in the moonlight. "Every day," she whispers. He looks at her then, really looks at her, and Rose feels as if he's seeing straight into her soul. "Tell me something true, Rose, something you've never told anyone else." The request is so unexpected, so intimate that Rose feels her defenses crumble. I write poetry, terrible poetry that no one would ever want to read. But sometimes when I can't sleep or when the world feels too heavy, I write down what my heart is feeling. It helps somehow." "Will you share some with me?" Rose shakes her head quickly. "Oh no, I couldn't, it's too personal too raw." "Raw can be beautiful," Alexander says softly. "Sometimes raw is the only thing that's real." Something in his voice makes her brave. Rose takes a shaky breath and closes her eyes, reciting from memory. "In silence I have learned to see the spaces between spoken words, where truth lives quietly, unadorned by performance or desire. In darkness I have found the light that shines not for applause, but simply because it must." The way stars burn in empty sky, witness to nothing but themselves, and the vast, understanding dark. When she opens her eyes, Alexander is staring at her with an expression she's never seen before, wonder, recognition, and something deeper that makes her breath catch. That's not terrible poetry, Rose, that's extraordinary. They sit in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Alexander speaks again. May I tell you something true? Rose nods. I planted those forget-me-nots the day I decided I had to marry. My mother died believing I would find love like she and my father had. But everyone who courts me wants the title, the wealth, the power. No one seems to wonder if there's a person beneath the Duke. He pauses. Until tonight. Rose's heart aches for the loneliness in his voice. What was she like, your mother? Alexander's face softens. Brilliant, kind. She saw the best in everyone, but she wasn't naive. She simply believed people were capable of goodness if given the chance. She used to say that the heart recognizes what the eyes miss. She sounds wonderful. You would have liked her, and she would have loved you. The words hang in the air between them, heavy with implication. Rose feels tears threaten, knowing how impossible this is. Tomorrow, Alexander must choose a bride, and it won't be the quiet sister who fades into shadows. I should go back, she says reluctantly. It's very late and tomorrow. Tomorrow, Alexander agrees, but he makes no move to leave. Finally, Rose stands. Thank you for sharing your garden with me, and for making me feel seen. As she turns to go, Alexander's voice stops her. Rose. Yes. Whatever happens tomorrow, tonight was perfect. Rose hurries back to the house before she can say something that will break both their hearts. Behind her, Alexander remains in the garden until dawn, surrounded by his mother's flowers, and the memory of storm-grey eyes that see too much. Neither of them notices the figure watching from an upstairs window, or the calculating expression on Victoria's face as she plans her next move. Dawn breaks grey and sombre over Ravenshollow Estate, as if the sky itself knows this day will bring heartbreak. Today, Duke Alexander must announce his choice of bride, and the tension in the great house is almost suffocating. Rose barely slept after her midnight encounter with Alexander in the garden. She replays every word, every look, every moment when it felt like they truly saw each other. But harsh morning light brings cruel reality. Whatever passed between them was just a beautiful dream. Today, Alexander will choose Victoria's intelligence or Isabel's beauty, as everyone expects him to. At breakfast, the atmosphere is charged with nervous energy. Victoria sits with perfect posture, radiating confidence. She spent the morning reviewing her notes on estate management and rehearsing conversations about political alliances. Isabel has taken extra care with her appearance, wearing a dress that makes her look like a Renaissance painting come to life. Rose picks at her food, trying to disappear as usual. Her mother keeps shooting her meaningful looks as if to say, at least try to make an impression. But Rose knows it's too late for that. The die was cast long before they arrived at Ravenshollow. Alexander enters the breakfast room looking haggard, as if he too spent a sleepless night. His eyes find Rose immediately, and for just a moment his carefully composed expression falters. Then duty reasserts itself, and he becomes the Duke once more. Ladies, he announces formally, I've requested individual meetings with each of you this morning. We'll use the blue drawing room beginning at 10 o'clock. Victoria's interview comes first, and she emerges 45 minutes later looking supremely satisfied. We had the most enlightening discussion about agricultural reforms and social responsibilities, she tells her mother confidently. I believe His Grace was quite impressed with my preparedness. Isabel's turn lasts nearly an hour and she returns glowing. He was clearly enchanted, she whispers to Rose. We talked about art, culture, and the importance of beauty in life. When I told him about my paintings, his eyes absolutely lit up. Rose's stomach churns as her appointed time approaches. What could she possibly say that would matter? What could quiet, unremarkable Rose offer that her brilliant sisters haven't already provided? The blue drawing room is formal and intimidating, with portraits of Alexander's ancestors gazing down from gilded frames. Alexander stands by the tall windows, his black hair catching the morning light, his broad shoulders tense with some unspoken burden. "Please sit," he says without turning around. Rose perches nervously on the edge of a silk-upholstered chair, her hands folded in her lap. The silence stretches until she can't bear it. "Your Grace, you don't need to pretend this meeting has purpose," she says quietly. "We both know you'll choose Victoria or Isabel. They're both extraordinary women who would make you a wonderful duchess." Alexander finally turns, and the raw pain in his eyes makes Rose's breath catch. "Is that what you think, that this has all been pretense?" "Hasn't it?" Rose's voice is barely a whisper. "Last night was beautiful, but in the light of day we both know it was just a moment out of time. You have responsibilities, expectations, I understand." Alexander crosses the room in 3 quick strides and kneels beside her chair, taking her hands in his. The gesture is so unexpected, so intimate that Rose gasps. "Rose, look at me," he commands gently. When she meets his eyes, she sees something that makes her heart stop. "Last night wasn't pretense. It was the first real conversation I've had in years. You saw me, not my title, not my wealth, not what I could give you, but me." "Alexander," she begins, but he continues. "Your sisters are remarkable women, and they would indeed make suitable duchesses. Victoria would manage my estates efficiently and represent me well in society. Isabel would grace any ballroom and make every man envy me. But Rose," his voice becomes husky with emotion, "you would make me happy." Tears spill down Rose's cheeks. "It's not that simple, you know it isn't. Your position requires—" "My position requires that I marry and produce an heir. It doesn't specify that I must be miserable while doing so." Alexander's thumb brushes away her tears. "My mother left me a letter to open on my wedding day. I read it last night, hoping for guidance. Do you know what she wrote?" Rose shakes her head, not trusting her voice. "She wrote, 'Find someone who loves your soul before they love your title. Choose the woman who makes you want to be worthy of her love, not the one who simply wants to be worthy of yours. The heart recognizes what the eyes miss.'" Rose's sob catches in her throat, but the expectations, the society pressures, "will matter less than you think once people see how I look at you." Alexander's hands cup her face gently. "Rose, I'm asking you to trust me. Trust us. Will you marry me?" For one shining moment, Rose allows herself to believe it's possible. She sees a life filled with midnight conversations and shared poetry, with someone who understands her heart and values her gentle strength. She sees herself growing into the woman she never dared dream she could be, supported by someone who loves her exactly as she is. But reality crashes back like a cold wave. "I can't," she whispers, pulling away from his touch. "You don't understand what this would do to my family. Victoria has planned her entire life around marrying well. Isabel has turned down 7 proposals waiting for someone like you. How could I steal their dreams?" "You're not stealing anything," Alexander says firmly. "Love isn't something that can be stolen. It's something that grows between 2 people who recognize each other." But Rose is already standing, moving toward the door. "I'm sorry, Alexander, I'm so very sorry, but I can't be the reason my sisters' hearts break. I won't be." She flees before he can stop her, leaving Alexander alone in the blue drawing room, feeling as if the sun has just set on his entire world. What happens next changes everything. Rose runs blindly through the corridors, tears streaming down her face until she collides with someone in the main hallway. Strong arms steady her, and she looks up to find James Whitmore, the Duke's closest friend and estate manager. "Lady Rosalind, whatever's wrong?" James asks with genuine concern. He's a kind man in his early 30s, with warm brown eyes and a gentle manner that has always made Rose feel comfortable. I need air," Rose manages between sobs. James glances around quickly, then guides her to a small side terrace where they won't be observed. "Tell me what's happened. Has someone hurt you?" The kindness in his voice breaks what little composure Rose has left. The whole story comes pouring out, her feelings for Alexander, his proposal, her inability to accept because of her sisters. James listens without judgment, occasionally offering his handkerchief as Rose's tears flow. When she finally falls silent, he's quiet for a long moment. "Lady Rosalind," he says finally, "may I tell you something about Alexander, about the Duke, that you might not know?" Rose nods, wiping her eyes. "He's been my dearest friend since we were boys at school. I've watched him shoulder responsibilities that would break most men, always putting duty before personal happiness. I've seen him be courteous to countless ladies who wanted to marry his title, never his heart. And in all that time I've never, not once, seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." "But my sisters—" "Your sisters are remarkable women who will find happiness with men who deserve them," James interrupts gently. "But they don't love Alexander, they love what he represents. There's a difference, and deep down they know it." Rose looks at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" James hesitates, as if weighing his words carefully. "Lady Victoria spoke to me privately yesterday. She's brilliant, yes, but she views marriage to Alexander as a business arrangement. She has detailed plans for restructuring his estate management, his social obligations, even his daily schedule. She sees him as a fascinating project to manage, not a man to love." Rose's heart clenches, and Isabel. Lady Isabel is honest about her motivations. She wants the prestige of being a duchess, the beautiful life it would provide. She told me herself that she believes love is less important than mutual respect and shared social standing. James pauses. Neither of them ask me a single question about Alexander's character, his interests, or what makes him happy. But you, every conversation you had yesterday was about understanding who he truly is. Before Rose can respond, shouting erupts from inside the house. They rush back to find chaos in the main hall. Victoria and Isabel are in the middle of a vicious argument that has clearly been building for days. "You think you're so superior with all your studying and planning," Isabel snarls at Victoria. "But you're just as calculating as I am. At least I'm honest about wanting the title." "And you're honest about having no qualifications for it beyond your looks," Victoria fires back. "What happens when you age, Isabel? What value will you have then?" Rose watches in horror as her sisters reveal sides of themselves she's never seen, petty, jealous, willing to wound each other to win. Other guests have gathered, watching the spectacle with shock and fascination. "Ladies, please," their mother tries to intervene, but both daughters ignore her. "You know what's truly laughable?" Isabel continues, her voice rising. "We're both fighting over a man who spent more time talking to Rose last night than he did with either of us all week." Victoria whirls on her youngest sister, her eyes blazing. "Rose, pathetic little Rose who can barely string two words together in company, don't be absurd." "Pathetic," Rose's voice is quiet, but it cuts through the chaos like a knife. Everyone turns to stare at her, and for the first time in her life, Rose doesn't shrink from the attention. "Is kindness pathetic, Victoria? Is caring about others' feelings pathetic?" "Rose, don't be dramatic," Victoria snaps. "You know perfectly well that you're not Duchess material. You don't have the education, the social skills, or the backbone necessary for such a position." Something shifts in Rose's expression, a steel that no one has ever seen before. "You're right, I'm not Duchess material. As you define it, I don't want to restructure someone's life to fit my vision of efficiency. I don't view marriage as a business transaction or a stepping stone to social status." She steps forward, and everyone in the room can see the quiet strength that has always been there, hidden beneath layers of self-doubt. "But I do love someone enough to want his happiness above my own comfort. I do care enough to see him as a person, not a prize. And I do have the backbone to walk away from what I want most in the world if I believe it's the right thing to do." The hall falls silent. Rose looks around at the shocked faces, her sisters, her mother, the assembled guests, and realizes she's found her voice at last. But it's Alexander's voice that breaks the silence, strong and clear, and filled with something that makes Rose's heart soar. "Then it's fortunate that what you want and what's right happen to be the same thing." He stands at the top of the grand staircase, having heard everything. His black hair is disheveled as if he's been running his hands through it, his cravat is askew, and his eyes burn with an intensity that takes Rose's breath away. "Because I love you too, Lady Rosalind Pemberton," he continues, walking slowly down the stairs, his gaze never leaving her face. I love your gentle heart and your quiet strength. I love how you see the world, really see it, and how you care for people without expecting anything in return. I love your poetry and your wisdom and the way you make me want to be worthy of your love. He reaches the bottom of the stairs and extends his hand to her. And if you'll have me, not as a duke seeking a suitable duchess, but as a man who has found his heart's other half, I would be honored to spend my life loving you. Rose looks at his outstretched hand, then at her sisters' shocked faces, then at the crowd of guests who are witnessing something they'll talk about for the rest of their lives. The choice is hers. She can be safe, quiet Rose who fades into the background, or she can be brave enough to reach for happiness. She takes his hand. The silence that follows is deafening. Rose's hand trembles in Alexander's, but she doesn't let go. Every person in the great hall stares at them as if witnessing something impossible. The quiet sister, the one everyone overlooked, being chosen by the most eligible man in England. Victoria recovers first, her face cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally cold calculation. Your Grace, surely you can't be serious. Rose has no experience managing an estate of this magnitude. She has no political connections, no social influence. She has something far more valuable, Alexander interrupts, his voice carrying the authority of his position. She has integrity, she has compassion, and she has my heart. Isabel laughs, but there's hysteria in the sound. This is ridiculous. Rose, tell him you can't accept. Tell him you understand this is impossible. For a moment, Rose wavers. The weight of expectation, of her sister's devastation, of society's shock threatens to crush her newfound courage. But then Alexander's thumb brushes across her knuckles, and she feels his strength flow into her. I understand that this is unexpected, Rose says, her voice growing steadier with each word. I understand that many people will question His Grace's choice, but I also understand that love, true love, is rare and precious and not something to be sacrificed for convention. She turns to face Victoria and Isabel, her heart breaking for them even as she claims her own happiness. I'm sorry you're hurt, that was never my intention, but I won't apologize for being loved or for accepting that love. Victoria's composure finally cracks. You selfish little fool, do you have any idea what you've done? I've spent years preparing for this opportunity, years. Preparing to manage someone's life, not to love them, James Whitmore interjects quietly. He's moved to stand near the sisters, his gentle voice carrying clearly in the silent hall. Lady Victoria, you are brilliant and accomplished. You'll make some man a remarkable wife, a man who needs a partner to help build something together, not someone to reshape what already exists. He turns to Isabel with equal kindness. And Lady Isabel, your beauty and grace will enchant someone who sees you as the prize, not the other way around. Someone who will worship at your altar instead of expecting you to be grateful for his attention. But this was our chance, Isabel cries, our one chance. No, Rose says firmly. It was one chance. There will be others, chances with men who will love you for who you truly are. Don't you want that? Don't you want someone to choose you the way Alexander has chosen me, not because you're suitable but because you're irreplaceable? The fight goes out of both sisters as her words sink in. Victoria's rigid posture softens slightly, and Isabel's tears turn from anger to genuine grief. I wanted so badly to be chosen, Victoria whispers, to matter. You do matter, Rose says, stepping toward her sisters while keeping one hand in Alexander's. You matter because you're intelligent and strong and capable, not because someone marries you but because of who you are. Lady Pemberton, who has been silent throughout this entire exchange, finally finds her voice. Rose, darling, are you certain, this life, it won't be easy, the scrutiny, the expectations. Mother, Rose says with a smile that transforms her entire face, I've spent 19 years trying to meet everyone's expectations of what I should be. I'd like to spend the rest of my life exceeding my own expectations of what I can become. Alexander's grip on her hand tightens, and the look he gives her is filled with such love and pride that several ladies in the crowd sigh audibly. The crowd begins to murmur, some scandalized, others charmed by the romantic drama they've witnessed. Lord Whitmore steps forward, his weathered face creased with a smile. "Your Grace," he says formally, "might I be the first to congratulate you on your excellent choice? I've observed all 3 young ladies this week, and I believe you've chosen not just with your heart but with remarkable wisdom." His endorsement carries weight, and soon other guests are offering congratulations, caught up in the romantic nature of the moment. Even those who disapprove find it difficult to argue against such obvious love. But it's Mrs. Crawford, the elderly housekeeper, who provides the moment that brings tears to everyone's eyes. She approaches Rose with a small wrapped package, her gnarled hands shaking slightly. "Begging your pardon, Miss, your Grace to be," she says softly, "but the late Duchess, God rest her soul, she gave me something before she passed, said I'd know when the time was right to pass it on." Rose unwraps the package to reveal a delicate silver locket, its surface worn smooth with age. Inside is a tiny portrait of a woman with kind eyes and dark hair, Alexander's mother. "She said," Mrs. Crawford continues, tears streaming down her cheeks, "that this should go to the woman who would love her son for his heart, not his title, the woman who would make him happy." Rose's own tears fall as she looks at the portrait, then at Alexander. "She's beautiful. I wish I could have met her." "She would have loved you immediately," Alexander says softly, "just as I did." As evening falls, the official announcement is made throughout the county. The engagement of Duke Alexander Blackwood to Lady Rosalind Pemberton sends shockwaves through society, but also captures hearts and imaginations. The story spreads like wildfire, the quiet sister who won a duke's heart through kindness rather than calculation. That night, Rose and Alexander walk again in the moonlit garden, but everything has changed. Now they can speak freely of their love, make plans for their future, dream together without fear. "Are you frightened?" Alexander asks as they sit beside the forget-me-nots, Rose wearing his mother's locket around her neck. "Terrified," Rose admits with a laugh. "I have no idea how to be a duchess. I don't know the first thing about managing a household this size, or entertaining important guests, or—" Alexander silences her with a gentle kiss, their first, sweet and tender and full of promise. "Do you know how to be kind?" he asks against her lips. "Yes." "Do you know how to see people's hearts?" "I think so." "Do you know how to love me?" Rose's smile is radiant in the moonlight. "Yes, oh yes, I know how to do that." "Then you know everything you need to know. The rest we'll learn together." 6 months later, on a perfect spring morning when the forget-me-nots are in full bloom, Rose walks down the aisle of the village church toward the man who saw her when she thought she was invisible. Her dress is simple but elegant, her face radiant with happiness. Victoria and Isabel stand as her attendants, having found their own peace with her choice. Victoria has begun corresponding with a progressive landowner in Scotland who shares her passion for agricultural innovation. Isabel has caught the eye of a young poet whose verses about her beauty have become the talk of London society. But more importantly, both sisters have learned to see their worth beyond marriage, beyond being chosen by someone else. They've found their own voices, their own dreams, their own definitions of happiness. As Alexander takes Rose's hand at the altar, he whispers words only she can hear. "Thank you for teaching me that the heart recognizes what the eyes miss." Rose whispers back, "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Their wedding is a celebration not just of their love, but of the truth that authentic connection transcends social expectations. Rose grows into her role as Duchess with grace and wisdom, bringing the same quiet strength to her position that she brought to every other aspect of her life. She creates programs for the estate workers' children, establishes a lending library for the surrounding villages, and becomes known for her compassionate leadership. Alexander thrives under her gentle influence, becoming an even more respected and beloved lord. And in the evenings, they still meet in the garden among the forget-me-nots, sharing poetry and dreams and the deep, abiding love that began when 2 hearts recognized each other across a crowded room. The quiet sister who thought she was invisible became the Duchess who changed everything, not by being louder or more beautiful or more accomplished than anyone expected, but by being exactly who she was, a woman whose gentle strength could move mountains and whose loving heart could heal even the deepest loneliness. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in competing for attention, but in being so authentically yourself that the right person can't help but notice. Sometimes love chooses us not because we are perfect, but because we are perfectly matched to someone else's heart. And sometimes the most unexpected ending is the most beautiful one of all. If this story touched your heart and made you believe in the power of authentic love, please give it a like, subscribe for more romantic tales, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their quiet strength is their greatest beauty.